This episode of Pool Magazine podcast is brought to you by BeatBot, the future of robotic pool cleaning. BeatBot's powerful cordless robots are designed to tackle every corner of the swimming pool with precision, using advanced navigation, smart sensors, and ultra-efficient suction. With easy app controls and high-tech features, it's never been easier to keep your pool crystal clear. No cords, no hoses, no hassle. Discover why more pool owners and pool pros are making the switch at beatbot.com.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Joe Trusty, and today we got special guests Derek Frey and David Amadio and Gil Damon and Steve Kismick with us here today on the show. We're going to discuss their new short film. It's entitled The Current State of the Backyard Pool Industry. Now, this is the very first time we've analyzed a film on this show that kind of hits this close to home as far as the pool industry is concerned. But before we get into specifics, I'm interested in what kind of reactions you guys were hoping for when people finished watching this film that you guys put together.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, ultimately, we hope it's a catharsis for Henry's character and his family, for those that actually watch the film. So I think, the characters are yearning for a connection for something that's been lost. And I hope that people connect with that they find some catharsis. I think we're all looking in our lives to try to reconnect in a real way with the people around us and the people we love. So we hope people come out of this hopeful, ultimately.
Yeah, I think it might leave some viewers feeling a little ambivalent, like a mix of emotions. I think they'll be happy, that the pool has been able to reunite the family, but they might also be mildly disappointed that it was all the result of some scamming, So a lot of our movies, usually end on kind of an ironic note. And this one will leave people a little bemused, I think. But I think it's more up than it is down, this one. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's start first with the title itself. The current state of the backyard pool industry. To me, it almost sounds like a white paper that somebody put together and not a short film. But I saw the film and I kind of know the answer to this. But for our listeners' sake and for our readers, explain to me why that name. Why'd you choose that for this film?
Dave, that's you because that was your search, right?
Do you guys remember, Steve and Gil, what the original title of it was, like in the pitch phase?
I don't think I do.
It was Poolio.
Poolio.
So it was like, like a portmanteau word of like pool and the deceased rapper Coolio. We were calling it Poolio. And it was like number 13 in a list of 14 possible ideas for a short film. It was like way down on the list. It was like the dark horse and other names that we were kind of toying with. I don't know if you guys remember the Great Suburban Baptizer. At one point, we were calling it that. And then the other 30%, that was in contention. But when I was conducting research, I kept Googling the current state of the backyard pool industry just for some articles and for some information. And the title just kind of stuck after that. And it kind of reminds me of, there's this group, the Smiths, and the titles of their songs were always very long. Sure. Almost like self-consciously so. So maybe it's kind of a nod to how they used to title their songs.
Title is very apropos after having watched the film and what that film is meant to represent. But at what point did you realize that the title itself was a big part of the commentary?
See, I saw it as a working title for a while, and I kept thinking, I think there may be a better title for it. But as we got deeper into the process of preparing, I was like, actually, this is the perfect title. It really, encapsulates what the story is when you look at it from kind of 1,000 yards, right? It's that is the story. It's the current state. In our story, it's the current state. Yeah.
I think the point at which we realized it was when you guys reached out and contacted us for the podcast. We're like, dude, I think we we definitely struck a nerve with this one. But, the pool is kind of like a vehicle. The pool's a symbol. It's a metaphor for what's going on with the characters. We're always trying to comment on man himself, and you're always trying to look for logical, real world motivations for why why the characters do what they do. And we happened upon this pool, and Gil will be able to speak, more about that since it's his pool. But yeah, I guess we kind of stumbled into this commentary. We kind of stumbled into this statement. And I think it's just so cool that you guys have picked up on it. It's wonderful.
I feel like for any of the pool professionals that may be out there listening to this and may actually watch your film, that there's a strange mix of humor and awkwardness and even recognition in the Rick character there. I mean, were you consciously trying to walk that line, or did that tone emerge kind of naturally as you were making the film?
Steve?
That's a recurring balance. I mean,
Yeah.
if people watch the work that we've done, it's something we're constantly trying to balance. And I think we like to challenge the conventions of storytelling. And I think dramedy, which is where I think this falls, allows to explore kind of that awkward realm. I like to challenge the audience and their range of feelings and emotions. So creating that complexity is really satisfying.
Steve, you want to talk about Rick a little bit since you were the actor who breathed life into him?
I'm still trying to get over the fact that Coolio's dead. I forgot about that.
Coolio's been dead, bro. Come on,
I
bro.
know. Yeah, I think a lot of our characters are, you can't tell whether they're how shifty they are, if they're genuine in their motivation. And I think the plot actually for this one, you don't really learn that until the end. But we did try to bring a little bit of the salesman quality to it, and
Yeah.
maybe he's scamming a bit, but at the end, I think everything is genuine and heartfelt. And those guys are on a mission,
Mhm.
and it's a good mission. They're positive pranksters, right?
Yeah.
They're
Mhm.
spreading goodwill house to house.
And Steve, Steve often plays these characters who are in positions of power and authority, and they like lull their inferiors into submission before they gently exploit them. He's done this in several films, inhabiting several different characters. And it's weird, like Steve's portrayal in this one, it straddles the line between satire and, like a realistic portrayal. And that's where a lot of our characters, kind of end up in that soft spot.
Sure. I mean, he's a character that feels very familiar to me, and I feel like he's going to be like that for a lot of other people in the industry. It's just he's not a villain, and he's not exactly a saint either, but he's definitely a slickster. And the fact that he's able to like talk over the Henry character, over Gil's character, and hammer him home with data instead of like, things that would resonate as the truth is, what we see a lot in the industry with certain kinds of salespeople. How much of that Rick character is satire versus your
Yeah.
own real life observations?
Yeah. I don't think he's a villain. I think he's a guy just trying to get by in challenging times. And, we all grew up in the same area of Delco, Pennsylvania, which is kind of like a gritty, primarily blue collar suburb of Philly. So I think a lot of our films are based in real life observation. And we like to put a satirical spin on the things that we know and see.
Yeah, he's definitely a composite of a lot of the self-employed blue collar guys that we grew up with and that we know. But he's also, I think, a little bit of the slick talking, glib salesman, like, the car salesman, the guy at the cell phone store or whatever, trying to sell you the newest model, the newest version. He's got a little bit of both going on with him. And I think Steve does a really good job of balancing those two
Mhm.
things.
When I hear him, that Rick guy trying to work Henry on the pool liner replacement, I hear him citing things like inflation, supply chain
Yep.
issues, the Texas freeze. I mean, stuff that I've actually written about in the magazine. Explanations that pool guys are genuinely using out in the field to give to their customers. But there's also a hint that these are really just like excuses that he's pulling out of his ass. I mean, talk to us about that whole scene.
Well, what's interesting is when you first reached out to us about this, I went on your website and one of the top headlines was about a Texas freeze like recently. So I was like, wow, I don't know if that's art imitating life or if there was a freeze when you guys were researching, writing this, but you definitely pinpointed something that was, particularly intentional in crafting. There's a lot of realness in there. And Rick is gifted at the craft at making a sale, right? Like
Mm.
that's one of his gifts.
Yeah, the whole Texas freeze thing that came from the research. And I guess that was us maybe trying to connect the plight of this one contractor to a larger industrial issue, like this thing affecting everybody. I guess we were trying to give the exchange between Rick and Henry some additional thematic weight. And the audience doesn't know if it's real. They don't know if it's legit. It could just be part of the scam. It could be part of the ruse. Is this guy a savior of the pool who's suffering too, or is he a greaseball? Is he a slime ball? You don't quite know.
I love the interplay there between the Rick and the Henry character, specifically the physicality, when he's walking by and he just slaps him on the shoulder, like that kind of emotion, like you need me, I don't need you, that pain sales energy that I hate. There's a lot of that storytelling without actually having a dialogue there. I mean, how deliberate were some of the choices that you made in directing their performance?
Well, again, Steve, that's over to you. He has a lot of experience with these characters, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I always end up playing these types of guys. I don't know what that says about me, but yeah, I think, we really needed some kind of vehicle to cause this dilemma for Gil's character, Henry. And when we started researching and learned about some of the troubles, Gil has a pool. He knows some of those expenses, and we started there. And after the research, it was like, wow, this must be a tough thing to sell for a lot of these guys. And we just kind of went from there and came out with the real justifications for the cost increase, et cetera. And then, you put some salesman touch on it, and it came out pretty real, pretty realistic. So
One of my favorite non-verbal moments in the whole thing is when Rick blows on the screwdriver.
Yeah.
This is like
totally
when
unexplainable.
yeah. That
Is he
wasn't
doing
written
work?
into the
I don't know if he's doing work, but the family's happy. So.
That wasn't written into the script, and that was, Steve's way of communicating to the audience that he has triumphed. In the same way that, when Gil's using the skimmer and it just kind of falls apart, that communicates his failure to the audience. So again, some of this stuff is written in, and some of it just happens spontaneously on the set, and we're just so lucky and fortunate to capture it when it does happen.
I felt like you nailed a lot of things that just came off to me as very genuine, specifically like Rick having to go to his rebuttal book to come up with all the different reasons why to go through with this renovation. I mean, the rising costs of fixing and updating and maintaining your pool are definitely making customers rethink some of those really costly renovations like a pool liner replacement. And those slick sales techniques that turn me off as the editor of Whole Magazine also turn a lot of consumers' feet cold and make them second guess the whole process. So I felt like you guys really nailed a lot of those things.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that was appreciated. And I
Yeah.
feel like that was a turning point, right? Because once the sales pitch, maybe it landed, maybe it didn't. That's when you got to call in the magic, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The nostalgia.
That's right. Clinch it.
Sometimes the Texas freeze isn't enough. You got to call in Willie Shamu.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
let's get to Henry's character, all right? Because I'm going to talk about him because he feels a lot like me. I mean, he's like a stand-in for a lot of middle-aged homeowners that I know, kind of nostalgic, overwhelmed by the situation that they're in. They don't know if the answers that they're being fed are genuine. Financially cautious because the rising cost is making problems in the house for him and his wife. He's very quietly disappointed, that he's not able to use his pool. You see him out there in his shorts. He's ready to go, but he's got no pool to get into. He feels like every dad I know in America that's kind of grieving the loss of those formative years with the kids by the pool. Was that the intention with this character all along?
Yeah, I mean, we need someone for the audience to root for, right? And to identify with. And I mean, Gil, you are that guy,
Yeah, Gil, speak on it.
This one, yeah. Well, it is, and it's funny. I'm the guy with the pool in real life, and like Dave said,
And the family.
Yeah, and a family. That's true. You see it. It's like you said. It's everybody at this age is sort of looking back and looking at those things, and it is interesting because the pool is something where you still go out. You have to maintain it. If you don't maintain it, something goes terribly wrong, and there's still something kind of joyous in maintaining it. Even just skimming the leaves and stuff. And that's this character. Sort of had that, but it's like at some point you're like, wait, what am I doing all this for? So I think that was part of the impetus for this, for the film, was that the feeling, I think, that a lot of us feel, like you said, you identified with it as well. And we all
it's like a fantasy of middle-class American fatherhood, because all of us are kind of watching our kids grow older by the day, and all these, pastimes that we loved, they're falling by the wayside. So I guess it's like this movie was our attempt to try to hold on to those things for a little bit longer,
Yeah.
before they do fade away.
I definitely was able to connect the dots with a lot of that there. I specifically, Gil, with your character, Henry's kids. I get that sometimes with my own children where I'm all excited about something and they could care less, but the indifference of your children, the characters of your children was a brutal thing to watch. I mean, they're engrossed in their phone, they're half answering you. I mean, basically you're looking for feedback and consensus to help make the case on why to replace the liner. And it's obvious they could care less. I mean, how important was that kind of contrast between what pools used to represent and what they compete with now in terms of like the real life scenario?
Yeah. You want to talk about that, Gil?
Yeah, no, those actually were my children in the film, not just but they were actors as well, playing my children on TV. But yeah, yes, you want to look back and you want to look at the pool was a great metaphor, like Dave said, for that, as a lot of things are, where it's like, hey, this thing brings so much joy to the family and has so much potential for that. But as the pool gets older, the children get older. It's like those times start to get behind you, and then you yearn for them to happen again. And I think that's what this film is looking for and looking at, and the characters are as well.
Technology is king, and I think like there are so many casualties in the culture of technology, because it's just so predominant. But the pool's like a little antidote to that. It's like an analog getaway from the digital maelstrom in which we all live. But this thing, it requires upkeep. It requires maintenance. It requires a lot of energy and care to preserve it. And sometimes it needs a little bit of magic too, to bring people back to it, to draw people back in and away from technology.
It is one of the last places that you really can't bring your phone in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, not yet.
Gotta leave it. Gotta leave it poolside. Can't bring it in there when you take that plunge.
Well, unless you're shopping around for a new iPhone.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that brings us to your character. I mean, once your character, Willie, pulls everybody into the pool, I mean, that's really when the whole film kind of shifts. Because at that point, I wasn't entirely sure what I was watching. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's right.
I said, is this going to be like a horror movie? Is this gonna
Yeah.
Nice. Getting that sense of dread that, Henry wakes up in the middle of the night, sees something on his pool. And that's really where everybody is suddenly infected by the joy of the pool once Willie tackles everybody. Visually, you move into these almost aerial pool ballet shots that kind of reminded me of those old Esther Williams movies from the 30s and the 40s. I mean, was that era a conscious kind of reference for you?
Oh, yeah.
That was the main reference was, those 30s films choreographed by Busby Berkeley, Gold Diggers, Footlight Parade. And then we looked up some like British water ballet news cuts, and we looked at Olympic synchronized swimming, and then Dave actually storyboarded the movement, based off of the reference that we were pulling. But that Busby Berkeley material was kind of the key to try to encapsulate that into something much smaller and comedic.
Yeah, Derek sent me a whole kind of like a whole trove of YouTube videos, and I went through them all and I kind of cherry picked all the stuff that I thought we could do, that I thought we could perform. And we just kind of compressed it into this not heavily choreographed, but kind of like lightly choreographed synchronized swimming routine. And it turned out good. But yeah, no, you hit it on the head with those reference points. And yeah, when Willie shows up, we don't know if he's like a water sprite or he's an actual person. He's another character that straddles the line between, real life, a satire of some sort of, nymph or otherworldly being.
Sure, yeah. I kind of picked up on some more echoes of another classic film, The Swimmer, Burt Lancaster's character that goes from pool to pool. And especially there at the end, I mean, was that an intentional nod or more like a shared DNA?
It's interesting. I'd say shared DNA. I mean, there's provoking aspects in Willie and Henry, their quiet dialogue at the end. But it is funny you bring up Burt Lancaster, because I did think about him in The Real versus the Magic, but I kept thinking about him in Field of Dreams when he's Doc Moonlight Graham. He's kind of a character that serves as a pivotal role in unifying the family in that film and also bridging between the real world and the ghost baseball players. So I did think of Burt Lancaster, but that film, that's just a shared DNA. But I completely see where you're coming from.
Yeah, that wasn't an explicit reference point, and neither was Dickens, but you picked up on kind of a Christmas Carol aspect, of his character and his entrance into the narrative, which, we hadn't considered, we hadn't thought about, but it's definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that character who introduces himself as the manifestation of why people angel. I mean, he's a part guardian angel, part trick. Yeah, he's the part ghost of summers past. I mean, that kind of structure that you gelled in is very reminiscent of A Christmas Carol for sure.
Willie's he's part of the act, but I think he's like the most honest and the most earnest element of the act. Like his shtick it's shtick, but it's sincere, right? It's like an earnest shtick, and he doesn't break character once. And I think at the end he kind of situates himself more in reality when he talks about how like he gave up his pool 15 years ago and now he's just like hopping around. So that kind of
That's
edges
real.
him a little bit closer to the real world than the
And he's
fantasy.
telling the truth there. I feel like that is his experience, and that's why he's doing this. That's how he feels fulfilled.
Well, the ending there kind of reframes Rick and Willie in a way that suggests that this is kind of like a cycle that repeats on nearly every job that Rick is going to do, pool to pool, homeowner to homeowner. Is that kind of some shared cynicism with the title of the movie itself?
I think they're ultimately, doing good for people, right? And they're also benefiting from it as well, because Rick is pure business. He's about the sale, and Willie is doing it for the reasons he outlined with Henry. Everybody kind of comes out a winner, right? The family is reunited. Rick has his check, and Willie feels fulfillment from making up for something he gave up years ago, right? So I kind of feel like it is the state of the industry, right? These guys are left to kind of do this to try to get the job done, but it's also bringing some joy to the world and people as well. So
yeah, they're selling not just pool liners, but they're selling family.
yeah, there's no downside unless Rick is really upping that price, but he probably isn't that much. So.
Well, if somebody in the pool industry asked you a simple question, is this film pro-pool, anti-pool, or neutral? How would you answer that question?
I'm the pro pool.
It's a pro pool, yeah.
Pro pool.
I think it's pro pool.
I think everything comes at a price, and our tagline is family comes at a price. And that's just a reality, like anything, even filmmaking, right? Like you like to create, but there's a business side to it as well. And you can't have one without the other. And I think that's probably the same for the pool industry and people enjoying their pools, right? There's a reality that you have to maintain it.
Yeah. Is family togetherness worth the price of summer's most expensive luxury? That's the question we're posing.
There you go. Love
that's it. It's like, even
our answer is yes.
It is. Yeah, I think it is worth it.
Even the salesmanship, like you said, back to the question you asked before, it's, these guys they're selling pools, and I bought a pool. It was an expensive investment, and it was great. It was wonderful. And I, enjoy every part of it. And, your questions about, the salesmanship of this, and there's different ways to do it. And it's like part of what I think this team of salesmen, with Rick and Willie, they had to bring some magic to help sell the pool. That's probably not an easy thing to do, and it really is. That's part of the sale there. You got to imagine what sort of fun you can have with it.
Yep. So glad I stumbled across your short film and I reached out to you guys. I'll have to work something out with you so that some of my friends in the pool industry can get an opportunity to watch this film as well.
Absolutely.
Please do. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me know. I mean, you've stumbled upon it. Like we've just started to kind of get word out there. Like literally a couple of weeks ago, we finished it, and we're right at the beginning of getting word out, and we want people to see it. So that's our main thing. We want people to experience it and hopefully enjoy it.
I think they'll get a kick out of it. I definitely appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule to connect with us today and hop on our podcast and join us. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Joe. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much for having us.
Thank you much.
Well, that's all the time that we have left for today. Make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on another episode of Pool Magazine Podcast.
This episode of Pool Magazine Podcast is brought to you by BeatBot, the future of robotic pool cleaning. BeatBot's powerful cordless robots are designed to tackle every corner of the swimming pool with precision, using advanced navigation, smart sensors, and ultra-efficient suction. With easy app controls and high-tech features, it's never been easier to keep your pool crystal clear. No cords, no hoses, no hassle. Discover why more pool owners and pool pros are making the switch at BeatBot.com.